Hey, it's your old pal Tom on the Tom Gulley Show. This time, let me tell you about Frank Sinatra, Old Blue Eyes, the chairman of the board. We are going to cover him from the very beginning to the very end as best we can. This is, of course, our cold open where we let people file into our live YouTube chat room. And we do this cold open for our audio podcast listeners so they don't just hear the music that's created especially for this show by our musical director, Leon Kennedy. Obviously, if you come to a podcast, you start hearing music, you're like, what is this? Why am I listening to, So fast forward through it if you're an audio podcast person. But before you do that, I have a little story to tell. It was sometime around 1990. And this was a time where people recorded things on tape, whether it was a cassette or a VHS tape of a TV program. You recorded it on tape if you really wanted it. Well, I happened to see in my cable guide that they were going to be showing something that hadn't been shown on broadcast television in a long time, if ever. It was a 1970 Frank Sinatra concert from London where he was introduced by Princess Grace of Monaco, the former Grace Kelly. Well, in those days, if you really wanted to tape something in the finest style you could, you didn't get the regular tape. You got metal tape, the high end, which costs 2, 3, 4 times more than the regular stuff. I immediately rushed out and got a metal VHS tape to record this Frank Sinatra concert. Now, over the years, as listeners of the show know, I collect a lot of movies and I collect a lot of albums. I have 800 CDs, not getting rid of them. I have probably 500 or 600 DVDs and Blu-rays. But at that time, I was equally stricken with the illness that made me purchase a lot of VHS tapes of films and many other things. In fact, when I would move, I would have to have the big kitchen-sized boxes, 6 or 7 of them, with just VHS tapes. Well, when DVD and Blu-ray became a thing, I got rid of all those VHS tapes, except a few of me playing soccer, and that Frank Sinatra 1970 concert from London with Princess Grace of Monaco doing the introductions. I'm not getting rid of it either, and I don't even have a VHS player anymore. That's the power of Frank Sinatra. And tonight you will learn that Frank Sinatra, in the words of Howard Cosell, thrilled generation after generation and somehow never found a gap. Let me tell you tonight about Frank Sinatra.
There's a room with a restless air, voices rising everywhere. Most fall wide or miss their mark till one cuts through and stops the spark. No long road, no winding tale, just the right thought set to sail. The room goes still for half a beat, then the band comes in complete.
That's the point, my pal, you saw it land.
Right in time with a swing of the band.
That's the point, my dear, you saw it too.
Tom Gulley, yeah, he's pointing at you.
That's the point, my
swing of the band.
That's the point, my dear, you saw it too.
Tom Gulley, yeah, he's pointing at you. Some press hard just to be heard, dressing noise up into words. But Mr. Gulley lifts a hand and the room falls in with a band. No flourish, nothing grand, just a thought you understand. When the rhythm nods along, you know you've landed something strong.
That's the point, my pal, you saw it land.
Right in time with the swing of the band.
That's the point, my dear, you saw it too.
Tom Gulley, yeah, he's pointing at you.
That's the point, my pal, you saw it land.
Right in time with the swing of the band.
That's the point, my dear, you saw it too.
Tom Gulley, yeah, he's pointing at you. Trumpets rise, the rhythm swells. Saxes know when timing tells. Every note knows when to stand and when to leave it in Tom's hands. Yeah.
That's the point, my pal, you saw it land.
Right in time with the swing of the band.
That's the point, my dear, you saw it too.
Tom Gulley, yeah, he's pointing at you.
That's the point, my pal, you saw it land.
Right in time with the swing of the band.
That's the point, my dear, you saw it too.
Tom Gulley, yeah, he's pointing at you. They said the night was crowded, too many voices in the room. Some burn bright for a moment, some fade out far too soon. I've watched the doors swing open, I felt them close just as fast. You learn to mind your footing on a floor made out of glass. I've been counted out, I've been counted wrong. I've heard the doubts get loud and strong. When the lights go out and I play that song, I'm still on. I've had nights full of promise, I've had days that wouldn't end. Some chase the sound of thunder, some wait for trends to bend. I've seen the door swing wide open, I've seen them slam just as fast. You learn to move with some caution on a surface built to crash. them talk about the past. Let them say it doesn't last. I don't need the wind forever. I just need to run one more mile, one more ride is sold. I've been counting up, I've been counting wrong. I've heard the doubts get loud and strong. When the lights go out and I play that song, I'm still on. Yeah, I'm still on. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going home. Yeah, I'm still on.
Hey everybody, what's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What is shaking tonight? Let me tell you about Frank Sinatra, Old Blue Eyes, the chairman of the board, the man who did it at the top for decade upon decade upon decade. He did it all, and he did it so very well. I'll even tell you about Frank Sinatra's connection to the movie Dirty Harry. I will tell you about, unbelievably, his connection to part of the reason the movie Die Hard with Bruce Willis even got made, and so much more. Before we do all that, please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, all those absolutely free things that you can do. They only cost you a click to help our show out with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing algorithm. Plus, we have super chats, we have memberships, we have gifted memberships. In our YouTube description, we have the PayPal, where you give the most, I get the most. Google don't get nothing. You can also go to the TomGulleyShow.com. There's tons of stuff there, including our merchandise store, with a wide variety of top-quality name-brand items with my logo on it. There you go. Let's get to our chat room very quickly. Chef is here. He says, Chef and crew on deck. The lineup tonight at the Skyline Club in Indianapolis, the most high-altitude restaurant in the capital city, is Cooper, Mikey, and the chef. Can you dig it? Miss Ruby, whose name I keep misspelling, she's returned, even through that slander, and she has shared this on her socials. Thank you so much. We really, really need that, and we appreciate it. She says, so nice of you to spell my name correctly. I feel understood. You are understood. Rumpled Trenchcoat is here. If you're not watching Rumpled Trenchcoat, a Columbo podcast, you're missing out. You're just missing out. Check it out on YouTube, Immediamente. Jared is here. He says, H2BH, happy to be here. Everyone don't forget to up fingers. And Rumpled Trenchcoat says, that was toe tapping and right on theme. Yes, I played two Sinatra-esque songs for the opening of the show. People saying hi. We do have the most cheerful chat room on the internet, as verified by independent sources. Let's get down to it, shall we? Shall we? I think we shall. So we will, because I'm in charge of that kind of thing. Francis Albert Sinatra was an American singer and actor, nicknamed, as we mentioned, chairman of the board, Old Blue Eyes, and he is regarded as one of the most spectacularly popular entertainers of the 20th century. And I'll just go ahead and say it. I think it is difficult for people of this era to understand just how popular Frank Sinatra was for just how long. I mean, 3 decades at the very, very top. And how many of the various media he was at the top in. Frank Sinatra was born on December 12, 1915, in a tenement at 415 Monroe Street in Hoboken, New Jersey, the only child of Italian immigrants, Natalina Dolly Garaventa and Antonio Martino Marty Sinatra. His mother was born in Genoa, while his father was from Sicily. Frank Sinatra, and this is in contrast to his very skinny physique when he first became popular. He weighed 13 and a half pounds at birth and had to be delivered with the aid of forceps, which caused severe scarring to his left cheek, neck, left ear, and lifelong damage. Believe it or not, one of the greatest singers in history had lifelong damage to his eardrum. His grandmother, in fact, resuscitated him by running him under cold water until he gasped. It even delayed his baptism. He was, of course, raised in the Catholic Church, you know. He was very close to his mother. His mother was a very sort of domineering, a big personality. And she had a gift for languages, was a local interpreter. His father, Marty, was a bantamweight boxer who later worked at the Hoboken Fire Department and worked his way all the way up to captain. Now, Marty was actually illiterate for quite some time. So his father stressed the importance of a complete and full education and had instilled in young Frank the desire to become a civil engineer and enroll at the Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken. Sinatra spent much of his time at his parents' tavern in Hoboken, working on his homework and occasionally singing for spare change. At a young age, Sinatra developed an interest in music, particularly big band jazz, and he listened to Rudy Vallee and Gene Austin and absolutely idolized Bing Crosby. For his 15th birthday, he got a ukulele from his uncle, Domenico, in which he performed at family gatherings. He attended David E. Rue Junior High and then A.J. Demarest High School, which is now Hoboken High School, and he arranged bands for school dances there, but left without graduating after having attended only 47 days before being expelled for general rowdiness. So to please his mother, Frank Sinatra enrolled at Drake Business School, but departed after 11 months. And he said nothing to his mother about this. She found him working as a delivery boy at the Jersey Observer newspaper, where his godfather worked. Sinatra later worked as a riveter at the Tietjen and Lang shipyard. He began performing in local Hoboken social clubs and sang for free on radio stations such as WAAT in Jersey City. In New York, right across the bay, Sinatra found jobs singing for his supper or for cigarettes sometimes. To improve his speech, Sinatra began taking elocution lessons for $1 each from vocal coach John Quinlan, one of the first people to notice his very impressive vocal range. He began singing professionally as a teenager, and he never, ever, ever learned to read music, but he learned by ear. He got his first break in 1935 when his mother persuaded him to join a local singing group called the Three Flashes. And the baritone of that group, Fred Tamburo, stated, "Frank hung around us like we were gods or something, admitting they only took him on board because he owned a car and he could chauffeur the group." Frank soon learned they were auditioning for a big show at the time, Major Beau's Amateur Hour show on the radio, and begged the group to let him join. Well, with Sinatra, this group became known as the Hoboken Four, and passed an audition to appear on the show. They each earned $12.50 and attracted 40,000 votes to win first prize. And the first prize was a 6-month contract to perform on stage and radio across the United States. You can see Frank here in this picture. He's on the far right. Sinatra quickly became the group's lead singer, and much to the jealousy of his fellow group members, garnered most of the attention from the gals, from the ladies. Due to the success of the group, Bose kept asking for them to return, but would disguise them under different names like the Secaucus Cockamamies or the Bayonne Bacalas. Although this may sound apocryphal, that was actually sourced from Sinatra's humorous stage patter during his legendary appearance with Count Basie and his orchestra at the Sands Hotel in 1966. But going back to 1938, Frank Sinatra found employment as a singing waiter at a roadhouse called the Rustic Cabin in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, for which he was paid $15 a week. Now, this roadhouse was connected to the WNEW radio station in New York City, and Sinatra began performing with a live group during the Dance Parade show. Despite the low salary, Frank felt this was the break he was looking for, and boasted to friends that he was going to become so big no one could ever touch him, which he did. In March of 1939, saxophone player Frank Main, who knew Sinatra from the Jersey City radio station WAAT, arranged for him to audition and record a song called Our Love, his first solo studio recording. And in June of that year, band leader Harry James, a giant band leader who had heard Sinatra sing on Dance Parade, signed him to a 2-year contract of $75 a week after a show at a place Frank Sinatra would become famous for appearing at, the Paramount Theater in New York. It was with Harry James' band that Sinatra released his first commercial record, From the Bottom of My Heart, that July. No more than 8,000 copies were sold. And further records released through James in 1939, such as All or Nothing at All, also had weak sales on their initial release. Thanks to his vocal training, Sinatra could now sing 2 tones higher and developed a repertoire that included songs like Willow Weep for Me and It's Funny to Everyone But Me and Here Comes the Night. However, Frank Sinatra became increasingly frustrated with the Harry James Band, feeling he was not really achieving the major success and acclaim he was looking for. Sinatra's pianist, and close friend, Hank Sanicola, persuaded him to stay with the group, but Sinatra left Harry James in November of 1939 to replace the lead singer of the Tommy Dorsey Band, as big, if not a bigger band of the time. Sinatra earned $125 a week, appearing at the Palmer House in Chicago, and Harry James then released Sinatra from his contract. On January 26, 1940, Sinatra made his first public appearance with the band at the Coronado Theater in Rockford, Illinois, opening the show with the Hoagie Carmichael standard, Stardust. Tommy Dorsey recalled, "You could almost feel the excitement coming up out of the crowds when this kid stood up to sing. Remember, he was no matinee idol. He was just a skinny kid with big ears. I used to stand there so amazed, I'd almost forget to take my own solos." Tommy Dorsey was a major influence on Sinatra and became a father figure to him. Sinatra copied Dorsey's mannerisms and traits, becoming a demanding perfectionist, just like Tommy Dorsey, and that would not change throughout Sinatra's career. Sinatra later said, "The only two people I've ever been afraid of are my mother and Tommy Dorsey." There's a story that says Sinatra and drummer Buddy Rich were bitter rivals, but most people believe they were friends and even roommates when the band was on the road. But professional jealousy did surface, as both men wanted to be considered the star of Dorsey's band. But later, Frank Sinatra helped Buddy Rich form his own band with a $25,000 loan and provided financial help to Buddy Rich during times of the drummer's serious illness. Buddy Rich had a heart attack like every 5 minutes. It was pretty legendary. In his first year with Tommy Dorsey, Sinatra recorded more than 40 songs. His first vocal hit was the song Polka Dots and Moonbeams in late April 1940. Two more chart appearances followed with Say It and Imagination, which was Sinatra's first top 10 hit. Other records with Dorsey issued by RCA include Our Love Affair, Look at Me Now, This Love of Mine, I'll Start All Over Again, and In the Blue of the Evening. As his success and popularity grew, Sinatra pushed Dorsey to allow him to record some solo songs. And Dorsey eventually said okay, and on January 19th, 1942, Sinatra recorded Night and Day, The Night We Called It a Day, The Song Is You, and Lamplighter's Serenade at a Bluebird recording session with Alex Stordahl as arranger and conductor. Sinatra first heard these recordings at the Hollywood Palladium and Hollywood Plaza and was floored, astounded at how good he sounded. Stordahl later recalled he just couldn't believe his ears. He was so excited, you almost believe he had never recorded before. I think this was a turning point in his career. I think he began to see what he might do on his own. Well, after those 1942 recordings, Sinatra knew he needed to go solo, with an insatiable desire to compete with his idol, Bing Crosby. But he had a contract with Tommy Dorsey, which gave Dorsey 43% of Sinatra's lifetime earnings. As you might imagine, a legal battle ensued, which was eventually settled in August of 1942. And in September, Tommy Dorsey said goodbye to Frank Sinatra, reportedly saying, "I hope you fall on your ass." But he was more gracious on the air when replacing Sinatra was singer Dick Haymes. Rumors began spreading in newspapers that Sinatra's mobster godfather, Willie Moretti, coerced Dorsey at gunpoint to let Sinatra out of his contract for a few $1,000s. Might sound familiar to anybody who's seen The Godfather. Sinatra persuaded Stordahl to come with him and become his personal arranger, offering him $650 a month, 5 times what Alex Stordahl was getting from Dorsey. Because of this, Dorsey and Sinatra, who had been very, very, very close, never reconciled their differences. And this was just the beginning for one young Francis Albert Sinatra. Let's look at the chat room very, very quickly, shall we? I think we shall. Team Brittany says, I bet that was fun for his mom. Oh my God. Good to see you, Team Brittany. People saying hi. We do have the most cheerful chat room on the internet, as verified by independent sources. Rumpled Trenchcoat says, oh, come on. Look at Sinatra compared to the other Hoboken three. They should have realized women would flock to Frankie. Yes, they were not nearly as cosmetically appealing as Frank Sinatra. Team Brittany says, I didn't know all of this about Frankie. Oh, Team Brittany, wait till I tell you the rest. You won't believe it. Posed Up Patriot is here. He's an OG. Good to see him. Rumpled Trenchcoat says, yeah, I heard about that story. I ain't no band leader. Exactly. And people saying hi. In May of 1941, Frank Sinatra topped the male singer polls in Billboard and Downbeat magazines. Keep in mind, he just had started 2 years earlier. His appeal to Bobby Soxers, those were teenage girls at the time, that's what they were called, revealed a new audience for popular music, which was kind of just for adults before that. The phenomenon officially became known as Sinatra Mania after his legendary opening at the Paramount Theater in New York on December 30th, 1942. Now, he became so closely associated with the Paramount in those days, it's not even funny. According to Nancy Sinatra, by the way, Nancy Sinatra, his daughter, still kicking it, still very active on social media. And for those of you who've never seen the video for These Boots Are Made for Walking, or any of her other hits, she had many hits herself. Also a smoking hot babe. Just going to say it. According to Nancy Sinatra, Jack Benny later said, I thought the damn building was going to cave in. I never heard such a commotion. All this for a fellow I never heard of. Sinatra performed for 4 weeks at the theater. His act following the Benny Goodman Orchestra got him his contract renewed for another 4 weeks due to his popularity. Sinatra became known as Swoonatra, or The Voice, and his fans were known as Sinatrix. They organized meetings. This is amazing. They organized meetings, yes, and sent masses of letters of adoration. And within a few weeks of the show at the Paramount, 1,000 Frank Sinatra fan clubs had been recorded across the United States. And this is one of those clubs. They would have these listening parties. As you can see, there's a record player, a gramophone, by the way, in the middle. And all these kids are just listening to Frank Sinatra. They couldn't get enough. Sinatra's publicist, a man named George Evans, encouraged interviews and photographs with fans, and he was the man responsible for creating Sinatra's persona at the time as a vulnerable, shy Italian American with a rough childhood that made good. When Frank Sinatra returned to the Paramount Theater in October of 1944, after the first show, only 250 people left, and there were 35,000 fans left outside, causing a near riot known as the Columbus Day riot outside the venue because they weren't allowed in. Such was the Bobby Soxer devotion to Frank Sinatra that they were known to write his song titles on their clothing. They were known to bribe hotel maids for an opportunity to touch his bed. They would steal clothing that he was actually wearing at the time, most commonly his bow tie. Frank signed with Columbia Records as a solo artist in June of 1943 during a musicians' strike. So Columbia Records, re-released Harry James and Sinatra's August 1939 version of All or Nothing at All, which reached number 2 on the charts and was on the best-selling list for 18 weeks. He was a smash hit and performed on the radio on Your Hit Parade from February 1943 until December of 1944. That's getting close to a year. He was also a tremendous hit on stage. Columbia wanted new recordings of this star as quickly as possible. So Alec Wilder was hired as an arranger and conductor for several sessions with a vocal group called the Bobby Tucker Singers. Of the 9 recorded songs during that session, 7 charted on the best-selling list. That year, he made his first solo nightclub appearance at New York's Riobamba and a successful concert in the Wedgwood Room of the prestigious Waldorf Astoria, New York, that secured his popularity in New York high society. High society? Well, that's a phrase that'll come up later. Sinatra released You'll Never Know, Close to You, People Will Say We're in Love as singles, and by the end of 1943, he was more popular in a downbeat poll than his idol, Bing Crosby. Frank Sinatra did not serve in the military during World War II. On December 11, 1943, he was officially classified 4F, not acceptable for military service, by his draft board because of that perforated left eardrum. Briefly, there were rumors by columnist Walter Winchell that Sinatra paid $40,000 to avoid military service, but the FBI then looked into it and said, no, what's wrong with you? But toward the end of the war, Sinatra entertained the troops during several successful overseas USO tours. Here he is with Bing Crosby and Dinah Shore and a general of some kind, I guess. He did this tour with comedian Phil Silvers of Sergeant Bilko fame. During one trip to Rome, he met the Pope, who asked Sinatra if he was an operatic tenor. Sinatra frequently worked with the popular Andrews Sisters in radio in the 1940s, and many USO shows were broadcast to troops via the Armed Forces radio service. In 1944, he released I Couldn't Sleep a Wink Last Night as a single and recorded his own version of White Christmas. During the following year, he released a bunch of songs, one of them being Nancy with the Laughing Face. And I'll tell you a story you may or may not know about Nancy with the Laughing Face. Many people believe that that song was written for either his wife, Nancy, or his daughter, Nancy, most believing it to be for his daughter, Nancy. The truth is, the original title for that song was Bessie with the Laughing Face. Later, they substituted Nancy in a pretty impromptu fashion, and it became a standard. Between 1945 and 1946, Sinatra sang on 160 radio shows. He recorded 36 times, and he shot 4 motion pictures during those 2 years. By 1946, this is going to blow your mind. By 1946, he was performing on stage up to 45 times per week. 45 times a week. Divide 7 into that and see how many that is a day. He sang up to 100 songs daily. And for all this labor, he was earning up to $93,1946 per week. In 1946, Frank Sinatra released Oh, What It Seemed to Be, Day by Day, They Say It's Wonderful, and The Coffee Song. And he launched his first album, The Voice of Frank Sinatra, which reached #1 on the Billboard chart. He was soon selling 10 million records a year. In 1947, he released his second album. Sorry. He released his second album, which this isn't it. This is actually Frank Sinatra at a recording session in 1947. That second album was called Songs by Sinatra, featuring songs of a similar mood as sort of an Irving Berlin kind of album. Sinatra had competition, various people that were also in the top 10 of the charts. His third album, Christmas Songs by Sinatra, was originally released in 1948 as a 78 RPM. When Sinatra was featured as a priest in a movie called The Miracle of the Bells, due to press negativity surrounding his alleged mafia connections at the time, it was announced to the public that Frank Sinatra would donate his $100,000 in wages from the film to the Catholic Church. Well, by the end of 1948, Sinatra had slipped to 4th on Downbeat magazine's annual poll of the most popular singers, and the following year he was pushed out of the top spots in polls for the first time since 1943. Although a song he recorded called The Hucklebuck reached the top 10, it was his last single release under the Columbia label. His last two albums with Columbia, Dedicated to You and Sing and Dance with Frank Sinatra, were released in 1950. He would later feature a number of the Sing and Dance with Frank Sinatra album songs, including Lover, It's Only a Paper Moon, on his 1961 Capitol release of Sinatra's Swingin' Session. This was culminating the low of Frank Sinatra's career, dropping out of the charts, his albums not well received, and then came the death of his publicist George Evans in January of 1950. According to Jimmy Van Heusen, Sinatra's close friend and songwriter, Evans's death to him was an enormous shock, which defies words, because Evans was the one that was crucial to Sinatra's career and popularity with the Bobby Soxers. Evans was part of what made him what he was, the Frank Sinatra phenomenon. And his reputation continued to decline as reports broke out in February of his affair with Hollywood actress Ava Gardner and the subsequent destruction of his marriage to Nancy Sinatra. Although Sinatra insisted that his marriage had long been over before meeting Gardner. In April, he was engaged to perform at the Copa Club in New York, but had to cancel 5 days of the booking due to a submucosal hemorrhage of the throat. And it was known that whenever Sinatra suffered from a bad throat or loss of voice, it was always due to emotional tension that deeply affected him. Well, this created a lot of financial difficulty for Frank Sinatra. Following his divorce and career decline, he was forced to borrow $200,000 from Columbia to pay back taxes after his new label, MCA, refused to front the money. Rejected by Hollywood, Frank turned to Las Vegas and made his debut at the Desert Inn in September of 1951. And he also began singing at the Riverside Hotel in Reno, Nevada. His decline in popularity was evident in his concert appearances. After a brief run at the Paramount in New York, Sinatra drew small audiences. At the Desert Inn, he performed to half-filled houses. At a concert at Chez Paris in Chicago, only 150 people turned up in a 1,200-seat venue. By April of 1952, Frank Sinatra was performing at a county fair in Hawaii. Also, his relationship with Columbia Records was disintegrating, with Columbia executive Mitch Miller claiming he couldn't give away Sinatra records. Columbia and MCA dropped Sinatra in 1952. Journalist Bert Boyer observed Sinatra had it. It was sad, from the top to the bottom, in one horrible lesson. Oh, but Frank Sinatra wasn't done. And his comeback is part of what makes his story such an American fable, a legend. Some would say a fairy tale. And we'll get to that in just a second, because I want to get to some of your insightful comments in our chat room. Rumpled Trenchcoat, and I'm glad he pointed this out, says there was a great Looney Tunes cartoon about two roosters that were pretty clearly parodies of Sinatra and Bing Crosby, making all the hens swoon and lay eggs. Paused Up Patriot remembers that. Jared says, fully yorked. Rumpled Trenchcoat says, I loved Phil Silvers and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Wade Curtis is here, says, happy to be here, Tom. I love Sinatra. The Guido Samurai says, thought you were going to say a month. Holy cramoli. Sky is here. He says his spending must have been way out of control if he's borrowing $200K to pay taxes. Well, you make it, you spend it, I think is the line that they say. But Frank Sinatra, oh, he was nowhere close to being finished. The release of a movie in 1953 marked the beginning of an almost unbelievable comeback. That's when From Here to Eternity was released. And it's also when Sinatra began to bury himself in his work with an unparalleled, frenetic schedule of recordings, movies, and concerts. On March 13, 1953, Sinatra met with Capitol Records Vice President Alan Livingston and signed a 7-year recording contract. His first session for Capitol took place at KHJ Studios, with Alex Stordahl coming back to do the conducting. The session produced 4 recordings, including I'm Walking Behind You, Sinatra's first Capitol single. After spending 2 weeks on location in Hawaii filming From Here to Eternity, Sinatra returned to KHJ on April 30th for his very first recording session with Nelson Riddle, and this partnership would become the stuff of legend. After recording the first song, I've Got the World on a String, Sinatra offered Riddle a rare expression of praise. Beautiful. And after listening to the playbacks, he could not hide his enthusiasm, exclaiming, I'm back, baby, I'm back. In subsequent sessions in May and November 1953, Sinatra and Riddle developed and refined their musical collaboration, with Sinatra providing specific guidance on the arrangements. Sinatra's first album for Capitol, Songs for Young Lovers, was released on January 4th, 1954, and it included A Foggy Day in London Town, I Get a Kick Out of You, My Funny Valentine, and They Can't Take That Away From Me, songs that became staples of his concerts. That same month, Sinatra released the single Young at Heart, which reached number 2 and was awarded Song of the Year. In March, he recorded and released the single Three Coins in a Fountain, each one seeking happiness, thrown by three hopeful lovers, which one will the fountain bless? A powerful ballad that reached number 4. Sinatra's fourth album, called Swing Easy, which reflected his love for the jazz medium, was released on August 2nd and included Just One of Those Things, Taking a Chance on Love, and All of Me. Swing Easy was named Album of the Year by Billboard, and Sinatra was named Favorite Male Vocalist by Billboard, Downbeat, and Metronome in 1954. Sinatra came to consider Nelson Riddle the greatest arranger in the world, and Riddle, who considered Sinatra a perfectionist, said, "It's not only that his intuitions as to tempo, phrasing, and even configuration are amazingly right, but his taste is so impeccable. There's still no one who can approach him." Sinatra became one of Las Vegas's pioneer residency entertainers and a prominent figure on the Vegas scene, which most people know throughout the 50s and 60s onward. The Rat Pack provided an outlet of gregarious banter and wisecracks, but it was Sinatra's group. He had unassailable command over those other performers, as improvisational as it may have seemed. On October 4th, 1953, Sinatra made his first performance at the Sands Hotel and Casino, and he started performing there 3 times a year. In 1950, well, let's go back a second here. From Here to Eternity, in the role of Maggio, opened a door to Frank Sinatra like no other. He had appeared in films before, but he was usually in the movie to sing a song or to be himself. From Here to Eternity established him as a major Hollywood star, winning him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, which was important because his wife at the time, Ava Gardner, was a movie star. And it helped add rocket fuel to this comeback. The man who had been on the outs, who had nearly disappeared from the public eye, comes back to stand on the top of the entertainment world. In 1955, Frank Sinatra released an album. I just listened to it today while I was putting this show together. It is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The album is In the Wee Small Hours, featuring the title track, Mood Indigo, When Your Lover Is Gone. And it was the first concept album of Sinatra's to make a single persuasive statement of a melancholy mood. He embarked on his first tour of Australia the same year, collaborating with Riddle again for the album Songs for Swingin' Lovers, which meant an entirely different thing back then than it does now. And it features a recording of I've Got You Under My Skin, which took 22 takes to perfect. Sinatra's February 1956 recording sessions inaugurated the studios at the Capitol Records building with a 56-piece Orchestra. Nelson Riddle said that Sinatra took particular delight in singing "The Lady is a Tramp," commenting that he always sang that song with a certain amount of salaciousness. In 1957, Sinatra released an album called "Close to You." He released two other albums, "A Swingin' Affair" and "Where Are You?" but "Close to You" was the gem. Most consider it to his closest album to perfection during his golden era and Nelson Riddle's finest work, which was extremely progressive by the standards of the day. The album was structured like a 3-act play. In June 9, 1957, he performed a 62-minute concert conducted by Riddle at the Seattle Civic Auditorium. The recording was first released as a bootleg, but Artanis Entertainment Group officially released it as Sinatra 57 in Concert in 1999. In 1958, he had another banger, an album called "Come Fly With Me," designed as a musical world tour. It reached the top spot on the Billboard album charts in its second week, remaining there for 5 weeks, was nominated for Grammy Album of the Year at the inaugural Grammy Awards. The title song of "Come Fly With Me" was written especially for him, and it would become one of the many songs irrevocably associated with Frank Sinatra. On May 29th, he recorded 7 songs in a single session, more than double the usual output. In September, he released Frank Sinatra Sings for Only the Lonely, a stark collection of introspective saloon songs, that's what Sinatra called them, and blues-tinged ballads, which proved a huge commercial success, spending 120 weeks on Billboard's album chart and peaking at number 1. Cuts from this LP, which I also listened to while preparing this show, such as "Angel Eyes" and "One for My Baby and One More for the Road," would remain staples of the saloon song segments of Sinatra's concerts. In 1959, Sinatra released "Come Dance With Me," a highly successful, critically acclaimed album that stayed on Billboard's pop album charts for 140 weeks. It won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year, as well as Best Vocal Performance, Male, and Best Arrangement. Sinatra released "No One Cares" in the same year. Sinatra grew discontented at Capitol, and he feuded with their president, Alan Livingston, and that spat lasted about 6 months. This was in 1960. His first attempt at owning his own label was with his pursuit of buying a kind of declining jazz label called Verve Records, and that never materialized. He decided, therefore, to form his own label, Reprise Records. And in an effort to assert a new direction, he temporarily parted with Nelson Riddle, working with other arrangers like Neil Hefti, Don Costa, and yes, Quincy Jones. Sinatra built the appeal of Reprise Records as one in which artists were promised creative control, as well as a guarantee that they would eventually gain complete ownership of their work, including publishing rights. Under Sinatra, Reprise Records developed into a music industry powerhouse, and he later sold it for an estimated $80 million. His first album on the label, Ring-a-Ding-Ding, was a major success, peaking at number 4 on the Billboard charts. The album was released in February of 1961, the same month that Reprise released Sammy Davis Jr.'s The Wham of Sam and several other albums. In 1962, Sinatra released Sinatra in Strings, a set of standard ballads arranged by Don Costa, which became one of the most critically acclaimed work of this Reprise Records period. His son Frank Jr., who was present during the recording, noted the huge orchestra, which Nancy Sinatra stated opened a whole new era in pop music, with orchestras getting bigger and embracing a lush string sound. He then began a collaboration with Count Basie and his orchestra for the album Sinatra-Basie the same year. And they got together 2 years later for a follow-up album called It Might As Well Be Swing, which was arranged by Quincy Jones. They were frequent performers together and appeared at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1965. Also in 1962, as the owner of his own record label, Sinatra was able to become a conductor and released Frank Sinatra Conducts Music from Pictures and Plays. In 1964, the song My Kind of Town, Chicago Is, was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. He released an album called Softly As I Leave You and collaborated with Bing Crosby on America I Hear You Singing, a collection of patriotic songs recorded as a tribute to the assassinated President John F. Kennedy. Sinatra increasingly became involved in a number of charitable groups. Sinatra's phenomenal success in 1965, coinciding, by the way, with his 50th birthday. Imagine a 50-year-old being on top of the pop charts right now. You can't do it. It prompted Billboard to proclaim that he may have reached the peak of his eminence. In June of 1965, Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and Dean Martin played live in St. Louis to benefit a prisoner rehabilitation and training center. The Rat Pack concert, called the Frank Sinatra Spectacular, was broadcast via live satellite to numerous movie theaters across America. The album, here's Frank with Dean Martin and Judy Garland, by the way. The album September of My Years was released in 1965, and it went on to win the Grammy Award for Best Album of the Year. How many Best Album of the Years is this guy going to rack up? One of the album's singles, It Was a Very Good Year, won the Grammy Award for Best Vocal Performance. A career anthology, A Man and His Music, followed in November, winning Album of the Year at the Grammys the next year. In 1966, Sinatra released That's Life, with both the single of That's Life and the album becoming top 10 hits on Billboard's pop charts. Strangers in the Night went on to win Billboard and UK pop single charts at number 1, winning the award for Record of the Year at the Grammys. His first live album, Sinatra at the Sands, was recorded during January and February of 1966 at the Sands Hotel and Casino. Backed by Count Basie, conducted by Quincy Jones. He had to pull out from the Sands the following year when he was driven out by its new owner, Howard Hughes, after a fight. Yeah. These things happen, don't you know? Sinatra released the album The World We Knew, which features a chart-topping duet of Something Stupid with his daughter, Nancy Sinatra. He collaborated with Duke Ellington on the album Francis A. and Edward K. With Sinatra in mind. Oh boy. With Sinatra in mind, Paul Anka wrote a little song for him. The song was My Way. Frank recorded it in just one take right after Christmas 1968. My Way, Sinatra's best-known song of the Reprise label, was not an instant success, charting at number 27 in the U.S. and number 5 in the U.K. However, it remained in the U.K. charts for 122 weeks, including 75 non-consecutive weeks in the top 40. Which was still a record in 2015. Now, you're not going to believe this. Here's one of the things you might learn on the show today that you didn't know. Sinatra told songwriter Irvin Drake in the 70s that he detested singing My Way because he thought audiences would think it was a self-aggrandizing tribute. However, according to NPR, My Way has become one of the most requested songs at funerals. And in an effort to maintain his commercial viability in the late 60s, Frank Sinatra would record works by Paul Simon. He recorded Mrs. Robinson. The Beatles, he recorded Yesterday. And Joni Mitchell. He did Both Sides Now in 1969. And I have to say, if you hear his covers of these songs and You Are the Sunshine of My Life by Stevie Wonder, they're Sinatra songs when he sings them. They really, really are. Let's get to some of your chats. I bet you there's chats there. Where am I at here? I bet you we got chats here right after My Way. Okay. Oh, I bet you there's chats. Who knows? Rankvid says, I just finished watching the Tom Gulley Show open from 10 months ago, and it's brilliant, mate. That needs to be in every one of your intros. Thank you, Rankvids. I don't know if you've heard the new intros. The gentleman who wrote that intro has written us, Leon Kennedy, our musical director, has probably written us 20 more songs since then. And they're all amazing. I, too, love They Call Me Mr. Gulley, and I thank you for the compliment. But all these other songs are kicking it. As a matter of fact, if you go into our YouTube description, there is a link to a webpage Leon Kennedy has put up with all of our intro songs in it. So give those a listen. I'd be interested in your opinion on that. The Nicest Guy says, H2BH, this stream could be replayed on a loop at the Sinatra Museum. Well, that would be flattering. I would enjoy that. The Guido Samurai said he must have had a partying problem. Well, I don't know that he had a problem, but I don't think it's any secret. Frank enjoyed a little Jack Daniels. It's liquid death. Wade Curtis says a lot of people who were around at the birth of Vegas eventually had huge problems with the IRS, including Joe Louis, Bud Abbott, and many others. Yes. Well, entertainers of the time were getting money in so many different ways that it was hard to cope with. The chef says, okay, the rush is over. We're going to start breaking down. Have a good night, Tom. And everybody say good night, Gracie. Good night, Gracie. Megabyte's here. And he says, Sinatra, the gangster's choice. Well, we will get to that. We will get to that. In 1970, Frank Sinatra released Watertown, a critically acclaimed concept album. But it only sold 30,000 copies that year and only got 101 on the charts. Sinatra left Caesar's Palace in September of that year after an incident in which executive Sanford Waterman pulled a gun on him. Yes, I said that. You heard me correctly. at Caesars. The executive pulled a gun on him. He also that year performed several charity concerts with Count Basie at the Royal Festival Hall in London. That's one of the concerts that I mentioned I got the special tape for and recorded. It's amazing. It's amazing. On November 2nd, 1970, Sinatra recorded the last songs for the Reprise Records before his self-imposed retirement. Announced the following June at a concert in Hollywood to raise money for the Motion Picture and TV Relief Fund. He gave a rousing performance of That's Life and finished the concert with Angel Eyes, which Sinatra had recorded on the Only the Lonely album in 1958. He sang the last line, "Excuse me while I disappear," and the spotlight went dark, and he left the stage. The unthinkable was happening. Frank Sinatra was going to retire at the age of 55, arguably at the top of his game. He told Life magazine, "I've got things to do. Like the first thing is not to do anything at all for 8 months, maybe a year." While Barbara Sinatra later said that Frank had grown tired of entertaining people, especially when all they really wanted were the same old tunes he'd long ago become bored by. Around this time, Sinatra designed Via Maggio, a holiday home and retreat near Palm Desert, with a little homage to his character in From Here to Eternity. When he was in retirement, President Richard Nixon, yes, that Richard Nixon, asked Frank to perform at a young voters rally in anticipation of an upcoming campaign. He obliged, and he chose to perform My Kind of Town for the rally held in Chicago in October of 1972. But just as striking, just as sensational as the announcement that Frank Sinatra was retiring was the announcement in 1973 that there would be a television special and an album entitled Old Blue Eyes is Back. By the way, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. Please do all those free things you can do to help our tiny little fledgling show here. I would appreciate it. It'd be really awesome. Please, if you could do that. The album reached number 13 on the Billboard charts. The television special Magnavox Presents Frank Sinatra reunited Sinatra with his old friend Gene Kelly. He initially developed problems with his vocal cords during the comeback due to a prolonged period without singing. But that Christmas, Sinatra performed at the Sahara Hotel in Vegas, and believe it or not, he actually returned to Caesar's Palace the following month in January of 1974. He began what Barbara Sinatra, his wife, describes as a massive comeback tour of the United States, Europe, the Far East, and Australia. And he had some problems in Australia, causing an uproar by describing journalists who were aggressively pursuing his every move and pushing for a press conference. He called them bums, parasites, broads, and $1.50 hookers. After he was pressured to apologize, Sinatra insisted instead that journalists apologize for 15 years of abuse I've taken from the world press. Union actions, canceled concerts, and grounded Sinatra's plane, essentially trapping him in Australia. But his lawyer arranged for Sinatra to issue a conciliatory note and a final concert that was televised to the nation of Australia. In October of 1974, he appeared at New York City's Madison Square Garden in a televised concert that was later released as an album under the title The Main Event Live. Backing Sinatra was bandleader Woody Herman and the Thundering Herd, who then accompanied Sinatra on a European tour later that month. I gotta say, this live album is always in the jag. Always, always, always. I absolutely love this performance. One of my favorite parts of this performance is he's singing, I have got you under my skin. And when he gets to the part where he's like, I've got you under my skin, this woman screams out from the crowd and he says, where does it hurt you, baby? And the whole place goes crazy. It's Sinatra, the coolest cat in the room, always. In 1975, Sinatra performed in concerts in New York with Count Basie and Ella Fitzgerald, and at the London Palladium with Basie and Sarah Vaughan. He gave 140 performances at the age of 60 in 105 days. During Labor Day weekend, 1976. I don't know how many of you have seen this. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis had legendarily split up and refused to speak to each other. Well, during Labor Day weekend in 1976, Sinatra was responsible for reuniting old friends, comedy partners Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis for the first time in nearly 20 years when they performed at the Jerry Lewis MDA Telethon. That year at the Friars Club, Sinatra was selected as the top box office name of the century, and he was given an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters from the University of Nevada. He continued to perform at Caesar's Palace in the late 70s, and tragically was performing there in January of 1977 when his mother, Dolly, died in a plane crash on her way to see her son perform. Sinatra canceled 2 weeks of shows and spent time recovering from the shock while in Barbados. In March, he performed in front of Princess Margaret at the Royal Albert Hall in London, raising money for the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. In 1978, Sinatra filed a $1 million lawsuit against a land developer for using his name in the Frank Sinatra Drive Center in West Los Angeles. During a party at Caesars in 1979, Sinatra was awarded the Grammy Trustees Award while celebrating 40 years in show business and his 64th birthday. That same year, former President Gerald Ford awarded Sinatra International Man of the Year Award. In 1980, Sinatra's first album in 6 years was released. The album garnered 6 Grammy nominations and peaked at number 17 on Billboard's album chart. But it also spawned another song that Frank would become legendary for. A signature tune called Theme from New York, New York. By the early 80s, Frank's voice had coarsened, losing much of its power and flexibility, but audiences didn't care. That's when he signed a $16 million 3-year deal with the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas. Incidentally, the Golden Nugget is the only hotel Tom Gulley has stayed in Vegas since 1987. I do not stay anywhere else. And if you want to talk about really good rates for a preferred customer, yeah, I get them. I love the Golden Nugget. I love Fremont Street. In 1982, Sinatra made a reported $1.3 million from the Showtime television rights to his Concert of Americas in the Dominican Republic, another $1.6 million for a concert series at Carnegie Hall, and $250,000 in just one evening at the Chicago Fest. Sinatra donated a lot of his earnings to charity. He was honored at the 1983 Kennedy Center Honors alongside James Stewart, Elia Kazan, and others. President Ronald Reagan said in honoring his old friend that art was the shadow of humanity, and that Sinatra had spent his life casting a magnificent and powerful shadow. He filed a $2 million court case against muckraker, slimeball tabloid journalist Kitty Kelly, suing her for punitive damages before her unofficial biography, His Way, was even published. I will say this about that. If you're a fan of Sinatra's, you might have read that book thinking it might cover his career. And if you've read it, you do not believe it. According to many people, the Sinatra family detested Kitty Kelly and her book, and it actually affected Sinatra's health. In 1984, Sinatra worked with Quincy Jones for the first time in nearly 2 decades on the album L.A. Is My Lady, which was very well received critically. In 1986, Sinatra collapsed on stage while performing in Atlantic City and was hospitalized for diverticulitis. 2 years later, he reunited with Martin and Davis and went on the Rat Pack reunion tour, during which they played many large arenas. On June 6, 1988, he made his last recordings with Reprise for an album that was not released. In 1990, he was awarded the second Ella Award by the Los Angeles-based Society of Singers and performed for a final time with Ella Fitzgerald at the award ceremony. He maintained a very active touring schedule in the early 90s, 65 concerts in 1990, 73 in 1991, and 84 in 1992 in 17 countries. Now might be a really good place for me to show you guys this. You guys aren't going to believe this. Dig this. And by the way, I haven't gotten into his movie career yet. We'll get into his movie career here in just a second. Hope you're enjoying the show. Please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, and do all those things, because I got a special treat. Sky says, Nigel, they call me Mr. Gulley is my favorite intro. Wow, I didn't know. I like some of these other ones. Sinatra returning to Caesar's Palace must have been part of his pull a gun on me once. Shame on you policy, says Rumple Trenchcoat. Rumple says, I remember there was a little rivalry between Sinatra and Liza Minnelli where she said that New York, New York was written for her, and Sinatra said, yeah, but I made it mine, which is the truth. Dig this. Dig this. You're going to love this. You're going to thank me for this. Well, you thank Frank, actually. This is the sheet of must-haves for Frank Sinatra's dressing room. His green room, or whatever you want to call it. This is, what do they call it? There's the official name for this. A rider. This is his rider. Okay, Frank Sinatra. Dressing room contents. Number 1, color TV with second input for in-house pickup. So that just meant, okay, I need to be able to get regular TV, and I also need to be able to watch what's going on in the in the, theater, be it a opening act or people setting up or whatever. Number 2, upright piano for dressing room. Number 3, private telephone with dedicated line. Number 4, 1 bottle each, Absolute vodka, Beefeater gin, Jack Daniels, white wine, red wine, Chivas Regal, and Courvoisier. There might be a little drinking in Frank's room. Number 5, assorted mixers, ginger ale, club soda, tonic water, etc., and 6 bottles of Evian spring water. 24 sodas, regular and diet, including Coke. 1 fruit bowl. 1 cheese tray, including brie, with assorted cheese crackers. 2 egg salad sandwiches. 2 chicken salad sandwiches with just a little mayo. 2 ham and cheese sandwiches. 3 cans of Campbell's chicken and rice soup. 12 rolls of cherry lifesavers. 12 rolls assorted lifesavers. 12 boxes Luden's cough drops, cherry, honey, etc. 1 bag of miniature Tootsie Rolls. 1 bowl of pretzels and chips. Salt and pepper, tea bags, honey, lemon, and limes, sugar, as well as sweet and low. 1 gallon spring water for tea. 12 water glasses, 12 wine glasses. 6 rock glasses, 8 to 10 ounce size. 4 porcelain soup bowls with knife, fork, and spoon. 1 double burner hot plate. 1 tea kettle with spring water. 1 crock pot for soup with ladle. 1 coffee pot set up with milk, cups, saucers. 6 linen napkins. 6 white bath towels. 6 hand towels. 2 bars of ivory soap. 6 boxes of Kleenex. 1 carton of Camels, no filter, and a bucket of ice cubes. Note, all soda, all rooms, 75% diet. Note, contact production manager for alternatives when performing outside the United States of the Americas. Now, if that's not just... That's why they call you the chairman of the board, man. That's why they call you the chairman of the board. You get called the chairman of the board when that happens. Let me get a nice, good, wonderful picture of Sinatra here again. Let's see. Let me get one I really like. I like this picture quite a bit. In 1993, Sinatra returned to Capitol Records and the recording studio for Duets, which actually became his best-selling album. And I have Duets, and I do have the sequel called Duets 2 the following year. And he remade all his classics with popular contemporary performers, with their vocals added to a pre-recorded tape. And this was Barbra Streisand, Bono, all the biggies. All the biggies. A really great idea. And the CD, even the artwork, is incredible. During his tours in the early 90s, Sinatra's memory failed him at times during concerts, and he fainted on stage in Richmond, Virginia in March of 1994. His final public concerts were held in Fukuoka Dome in Japan, December 19th and 20th, 1994. The following year, Sinatra sang for the last time on February 25th, 1995, before a live audience of 1,200 select guests at the Palm Desert Marriott Ballroom on the closing night of the Frank Sinatra Desert Classic Golf Tournament. Esquire reported about the show that Sinatra was clear, tough, on the money, and in absolute control. He was awarded the Legend Award at the 1994 Grammy Awards, where he was introduced by Bono, who said of him, "Frank's the chairman of the bad attitude. Rock and roll plays at being tough, but this guy is the boss, the chairman of the boss." In 1995, to mark Sinatra's 80th birthday, the Empire State Building glowed blue. A star-studded tribute, Sinatra, 80 Years My Way, was held at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, featuring performers like Ray Charles, Richard Little, Natalie Cole, all singing his songs. At the end of the program, Sinatra performed on stage for the last time to sing the final notes of New York, New York with an ensemble. I'll just point out again, Frank Sinatra never learned how to read music, ever. He could follow a lead sheet, but that was it. Musicians said that Frank had a sixth sense, which demonstrated unusual proficiency when it came to detecting incorrect notes and sounds within an entire orchestra. He was an aficionado of classical music, and he had an amazing vocal range, but his phrasing, the way he delivered the songs, was totally unique and totally split-second perfect. Nobody does phrasing like Frank Sinatra, ever. And phrasing does not mean what it means here on this show, by the way. Like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, a little something for the effort, please. And then we're going to get to Frank Sinatra's movie career and just ramble through it very, very quickly, which he's an incredible music career. Absolutely incredible. Let's look at some of your comments. What do we got here? Rumple said this honestly could be a 4-hour show with all Sinatra's accomplishments. Well, it might be by the time I'm finished. Positive Patriot says, they call me Mr. Gulley is my favorite too. Please add it back to the mix, Tom. Okay. This menu, what an ass. No, I think that's just when you're the guy, you want all that stuff. You also have to remember, Megabyte, Frank wasn't just in that room by himself. He had Jilly Rizzo he had a lot of people with him. And Frank would receive various luminaries, other stars of stage and screen and stuff into his dressing room. So he had to have plenty on stock. Megabyte said, what? No girls? Rumple Trenchcoat says, Campbell's soup? Well, Campbell's soup might just be, hey, I got used to it as a kid. It also might be, you can get Campbell's soup anywhere, you know. Rumple Trenchcoat says, Duets was great, wasn't it? He also says, there was a wonderful moment in the Three Tenors when they sang My Way and bowed to Sinatra in the crowd. Yes, that was fabulous. That was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So Frank attempted to pursue an acting career in the early 40s. While films appealed to him because he was so self-confident, he didn't like the movies that he was in. He thought they stunk. And he usually was in the movie just to sing a song, right? That all changed a little bit in 1945 when Frank Sinatra was paired up with, with Gene Kelly and Katherine Grayson in a Technicolor musical called Anchors Aweigh, where he played a sailor on leave in Hollywood. Now, this movie was a major success, and it got several Academy Award wins and nominations, and the song I Fall in Love Too Easily, sung by Sinatra in the film, was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song. He briefly appeared in another couple movies, then starred again with Gene Kelly in the Technicolor musical Take Me Out to the Ball Game in 1949, which they play baseball players who are part-time vaudevillians. And he teamed up with Gene Kelly another time in 1949 for On the Town, again playing a sailor on leave, this time in New York City. The film remains very highly rated by critics, and in 2006, it ranked number 19 on the American Film Institute's list of best musicals. He did another movie in 1951 called Double Dynamite that was produced by Howard Hughes, and he made a movie called Meet Danny Wilson in 1952, and they didn't do nothing. And then, of course, we had From Here to Eternity, which we covered just a little while ago, and that was just his comeback, and it established him as someone able to play a legitimate dramatic role. He starred opposite Doris Day in the musical film Young at Heart, and then he got critical praise playing, a total psychopath in the movie Suddenly with Sterling Hayden. And by the by, the Tom Gulley Show has done a watch-along with the movie Suddenly, which is supposedly public domain. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor, not supporting, for his role as a heroin addict in a very dark film called The Man with the Golden Arm. And then he was in a Broadway standard that was turned into a movie. By the way, I used to have that movie poster for Man with the Golden Arm. And then he was cast in Guys and Dolls. And frankly, I think he's awesome in Guys and Dolls. It's just me. I think he's pretty awesome in Guys and Dolls. He also was in The Tender Trap, both of those films in 1955. He was nominated for a BAFTA award for actor in a leading role as a medical student in Stanley Kramer's directorial debut, Not as a Stranger. During production, Sinatra got drunk with Robert Mitchum and Broderick Crawford and trashed Stanley Kramer's dressing room. Kramer vowed at the time never to hire Sinatra again, and later regretted casting him again as a Spanish guerrilla leader in The Pride and the Passion. Another big hit, Sinatra with Bing Crosby and Grace Kelly in High Society for MGM, which reportedly earned $250,000 for Frank Sinatra. The public rushed to the cinemas to see Sinatra, Crosby, and hear Grace Kelly together on screen. It ended up earning over $13 million at the box office, becoming one of the highest grossing pictures of the year. He starred opposite Rita Hayworth and Kim Novak in Pal Joey, for which Sinatra won a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. And the songs that he sings in that movie are iconic as well. Pal Joey was a big movie for Frank Sinatra. And one of the songs he sang in it is Lady is a Tramp, which some consider to be, other than his Academy Award-winning performance in From Here to Eternity, the finest moment of his film career. He then portrayed comedian Joe E. Lewis in The Joker is Wild, and the song All the Way, which he sang, won Academy Award for Best Original Song. By 1958, Frank Sinatra was one of the 10 biggest box office draws in the United States, appearing with Dean Martin and Shirley MacLaine in a fabulous movie. It's a dramatic film. It's excellent. Everybody in it is amazing, called Some Came Running. He did Kings Go Forth with Tony Curtis and Natalie Wood. He sung High Hopes in the Frank Capra comedy Hole in the Head and won Academy Award for Best Original Song again. Due to an obligation, Sinatra owed 20th Century Fox for walking off the set of a movie called Carousel. So he did a movie called Can Can with Shirley MacLaine, Maurice Chevalier, and Louis Jordan. He earned $200,000 and 25% of the profits from the performance. And then he starred in the Las Vegas set Ocean's 11, remade I don't know how many times by George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and the like. But this was the one that started it. And it was the first film to feature the Rat Pack together and the start of a new era of screen cool. Sinatra personally financed the film and paid Martin $150,000 and Sammy Davis Jr. $125,000, which were considered just ridiculous, lavish, exorbitant fees. He had a leading role opposite a little actor called Lawrence Harvey in The Manchurian Candidate, which Sinatra considered to be the role he was most excited about and the high point of his film career. Critics found the portrayal of Sinatra's character to be quietly humorous. He appeared with the Rat Pack in the Western Sergeants 3. Is that the one with Ruta Lee in it? No, it's not. And then again in the gangster-oriented musical Robin and the Seven Hoods. For his performance in Come Blow Your Horn, adapted from a Neil Simon play, he was nominated for the Golden Globe again. Now, Frank Sinatra directed only one film. It was an anti-war American-Japanese co-production called None But the Brave, and it was released in 1965. He starred and co-produced. He then starred in Von Ryan's Express, and in the late 60s, he became known for playing detectives in the movies, including Tony Rome. Here he is with Jill St. John, that lucky... And the Tony Rome sequel, Lady in Cement, with Raquel Welch. That lucky... He played a similar role in Detective. Now, I told you a little earlier I was going to tell you about his connection to Die Hard. Because Die Hard was based on the novel sequel to The Detective, which Sinatra played in 1968. 20th Century Fox was contractually obligated to offer Frank Sinatra the lead role of John McClane. Well, Frank, who was 70 years old at the time, said, "No, thank you very much." Frank starred opposite George Kennedy in the Western Dirty Dingus McGee in 1970, which is fun to say, but was somewhat of an abysmal failure. The critics did not like it. The following year, Sinatra received a Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award and had planned to play Detective Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry, but had to turn down the role due to developing what is known as Dupuytren's contracture in his hand. It's a temporary thing, but it's a condition where your hand kind of claws up on you a little bit. His last major film role was opposite Faye Dunaway in The First Deadly Sin. As a troubled New York City homicide cop, Sinatra gave an extraordinarily rich, heavily layered characterization, one that made for a terrific farewell to his film career. Now, TV and radio, I'm only going to take a second on these and just blow through them really quickly. But he did have quite an extensive TV and radio career, and it was big time. Let's see here. Rumpled Trenchcoat said his early movie career, he was like the Andrews sisters showing up in an Abbott and Costello movie just to sing a song. Exactly. Rumpled says, I've always wondered if it was harder for Gene Kelly to sing with Sinatra or for Sinatra to dance with Gene Kelly. Well, in the main event, he does some dancing, and during one of the songs, and the crowd cheers, and he goes, who do you think taught Gene Kelly to dance? It was me. Rumpled Trenchcoat says, another great SG masterpiece was Sinatra Gully from Suddenly. Yeah, that's in the Call Me Mr. Gully opening video that I did. Rumpled Trenchcoat says, Lawrence Harvey will always be the chess murderer to me. Yeah, he's that is kind of a iconic, defining thing for him. After beginning on the Major Bowes Amateur Hour radio show with the Hoboken Four back in 1935, he was the star of radio shows on his own on NBC and CBS from the early 40s to the mid-50s. Yeah. Yes, he was. Daggone it. Hold on. There we go. Early on, he did work with the aforementioned Andrews sisters. They would be guests on each other's shows. The ad agency BBD&O produced a radio series starring Sinatra for Lucky Strike called Light Up Time. Some 176 15-minute shows feature him and Dorothy Kirsten singing, which lasted through May of 1950. And in May of 1950, or in 1950 at some point, the Frank Sinatra Show began on CBS television. Now, Sinatra did not find the success on television that he had hoped, and he never really, after this point, wanted to have his own TV series. But you guys know I love the old-time radio. In 1953 and 1954, Frank Sinatra starred in the NBC radio program Rocky Fortune, portraying Rocco Fortunato. And it's a darn good show. In 1957, Sinatra formed a 3-year, $3 million contract with ABC to launch the Frank Sinatra Show, featuring himself and guests in 36 half-hour shows. And ABC agreed to allow Sinatra's Hobart Productions to keep 60% of the residuals, and they bought stock in Sinatra's film production unit, guaranteeing him $7 million. Now, when it started, it was a critical success, but then it started to not be very popular with the critics because they thought Sinatra and frequent guest Dean Martin performed like a pair of adult delinquents sharing the same cigarette and leering at girls. What's wrong with that? In return, Sinatra later made numerous appearances on the Dean Martin Show and the Dean Martin TV specials. Elvis actually appeared on a TV special called Welcome Home Elvis, broadcast in March of 1960, and it got massive ratings. In the show, he performed a duet with Elvis, who sang Sinatra's 1957 hit Witchcraft, with Frank singing the 1956 Elvis classic Love Me Tender. Sinatra got along very, very well with Elvis, although he had previously been highly critical of Elvis Presley as well as rock and roll in the 50s. He actually described it as a deplorable, rancid-smelling aphrodisiac that fosters almost totally negative and destructive reactions in young people. I think he changed his tune. A CBS News special about Sinatra's 50th birthday, Frank Sinatra, A Man and His Music, was broadcast in November of 1965 and got an Emmy and a Peabody Award. Yes. Sinatra starred as a detective in Contract on Cherry Street, 1977 on television, cited as one of the most acclaimed starring roles in dramatic television film. 10 years later, Sinatra made a guest appearance opposite Tom Selleck in Magnum P.I., shot in January of 1987. How about his family life? Well, he married Nancy Barbato from 1939 to 1951. They had 3 children. Nancy Sinatra, fine artist and great singer herself. Frank Jr., fine artist and great singer himself. And Tina. He met his first wife, Nancy, while working as a lifeguard. Gossip magazines published details of his carrying on with Marilyn Maxwell, Lana Turner, Joy Lansing. He was married to Hollywood actress Ava Gardner from 1951 to 1957. It was a turbulent marriage with many well-publicized fights and altercations, and the couple announced their separation on October 29th, 1953 through MGM. Gardner filed for divorce the next year at a time when she was dating, you can't make this stuff up folks, Matador Luis Miguel Dominguez, but the divorce was not officially settled until 1957. Sinatra continued to feel very strongly for her, and they remained lifelong friends. In 1957, Sinatra moved to a home in Rancho Mirage, California, called The Compound. He reportedly broke off an engagement to Lauren Bacall in 1958 and dancer Juliette Prowse in 1962. He had been romantically linked to Marilyn Monroe, Pat Sheehan, Vicki Dugan, Kip Hamilton. Sinatra and Mia Farrow were married on July 19, 1966, but divorced just a little over 2 years later. They did remain close friends for life. And in a 2013 interview, Mia Farrow said that Sinatra might be the father of her son, Ronan Farrow. In a 2015 CBS Sunday Morning interview, Nancy Sinatra dismissed the claim as nonsense. She said her father had a vasectomy years before Farrow's birth. Sinatra was married to Barbara Manx from 1976 until his death. They were married in July of 1976 in Mirage, California. He was close friends with many people. Jilly Rizzo was his longtime bodyguard and compadre. Songwriter Jimmy Van Heusen, golfer Ken Venturi, comedian Pat Henry, of course, comedian Don Rickles. He was good friends with baseball manager Leo Durocher and President John F. Kennedy. In his spare time, he enjoyed listening to classical music. He swam daily in the Pacific Ocean, played golf with Ken Venturi at the course in Palm Springs, where he lived in the house he had commissioned. He liked painting, reading, and building model railways. He was known for his immaculate sense of style. He spent lavishly on expensive custom-tailored tuxedos and stylish pinstripe suits. He was also obsessed with cleanliness. He personified America in the 50s, cocky, eye on the main chance, optimistic, and full of the sense of possibility, said one critic. Barbara Sinatra wrote, a big part of Frank's thrill was the sense of danger that he exuded, an underlying, ever-present tension only those closest to him knew could be diffused with humor. Cary Grant, a friend of Sinatra, stated that Sinatra was the most honest person he'd ever met, who spoke a simple truth without artifice, and that scared people. Cary Grant, as a matter of fact, was often moved to tears by Sinatra's performances. Sinatra's mood swings often developed into some rough treatment of people, especially those he felt had crossed him. particularly journalists who gave him scathing reviews, publicists that were unpleasant, or photographers that wouldn't mind their manners. He was also known for his generosity, particularly after his comeback. When Lee J. Cobb nearly died from a heart attack in June 1955, Frank Sinatra flooded him with books, flowers, delicacies, paid his hospital bills, and visited him daily, telling him that his finest acting was yet to come. Frank Sinatra was present at a little event called the Mafia Havana Conference in 1946, and the press learned of him being there with Lucky Luciano. He was reported to be good friends with mobster Sam Giancana, and that he adored Bugsy Siegel. He performed in Las Vegas, and those people were there at that time. The FBI kept records amounting to 2,403 pages on Sinatra, who was a natural target with his alleged mafia ties and his friendship with John F. Kennedy. The FBI kept him under surveillance for almost 5 decades, beginning in the 40s. Those documents include accounts of Sinatra as the target of death threats and extortion schemes. As you might imagine. The awards for Frank Sinatra, I'm not going to go through them all. He's been honored by anyone that does an honor for anything. There he is at Grauman's Chinese Theater, etching his way into cement. Of course, his star is on Hollywood Boulevard for 3 different disciplines, by the way: television, movies, and, of course, recording. During his final years of life, Frank Sinatra was in ill health and frequently hospitalized for heart and breathing problems, high blood pressure, pneumonia, bladder cancer. He made no public appearances following a heart attack in February of 1997. On the evening of May 14th, 1998, Frank Sinatra died in his sleep at age 82 after suffering another heart attack at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. His wife, Barbara, at his side. Barbara encouraged Frank to fight while attempts were made to stabilize him, and reported that Sinatra's final words were, "I'm losing." The night of Frank Sinatra's death, the lights on the Empire State Building were turned blue, and the lights at the Las Vegas Strip were dimmed, and the casinos stopped spinning for 1 minute. Significant increases in recording sales worldwide were reported by Billboard in the month of Sinatra's death. Sinatra's funeral was held at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills, California on May 20th, 1998, with 400 mourners in attendance and thousands of fans outside. Gregory Peck, Tony Bennett, Frank Jr. addressed the mourners. Frank Sinatra was buried in a blue business suit, his grave adorned with mementos from family members, and he was buried next to his parents in Desert Memorial Park in Cathedral City, California. The phrases, "the best is yet to come," and "beloved husband and father," were placed on Sinatra's very modest grave marker. His gravestone was changed as of 2021 to read "Sleep Warm, Papa," due to damage to the original gravestone. That, ladies and gentlemen, before I get to your chats, is just a small tip of the iceberg of the things I can tell you about the man, the legend, the American story of one Francis Albert Sinatra, Old Blue Eyes, and the chairman of the board. Let's get to those chats of yours very quickly here. Didn't realize the opening theme song was so popular. Never realized it. Doopa Doopa Doo says, hello, Tom and chat. Nice show tonight. I was listening while driving. Nice to see you here, Doopa. People saying hi. Most cheerful chat room on the internet is verified by independent sources. People saying hi to Rumpled Trenchcoat. Rumpled Trenchcoat saying hi back. Rumpled Trenchcoat was an extremely generous $10 super chat. Says, my favorite joke told by both Don Rickles and Jackie Mason. Frank Sinatra saved my life once. A group of 4 guys jumped me and beat me half to death. Sinatra came by and said, that's enough, boys. I've heard that was Shecky Green as well. And that he said, it's about enough. I love the story that Rickles told about there was a girl Don Rickles was very interested in, and he really wanted to impress her. So he took her out to dinner, and there, the other end of the restaurant sits Frank Sinatra. And Rickles mentions to this girl that he knows Frank Sinatra. She, oh, really? Do you think I could meet him? And so Rickles goes up to Sinatra, where he's sitting, and says, Frank, could you do me a favor? I'm trying to make out with this girl here. And it would really make me look like a big shot if you'd come over and say something. If you'd just say hi. No problem, Don. Just give me a second to finish up. I'll be right over. So Rickles goes back to his date. They're having dinner. And Frank Sinatra walks up and he says, hello, Don. How are you? It's nice to see you. And Rickles goes, Frank, can't you see I'm with people? I'm trying to eat here. I didn't do it as well, but that's just it. Hey, tomorrow we'll be covering the unsolved murder of television news reporter Jennifer Servo. On Saturday, we will cover the Hays Code. Those are the regulations that govern motion pictures before our current rating system. Very interesting show, very weird regulations. I think you'll enjoy it. And then on Sunday, we will cover a show I have DVD of, the grooviest, rockinest show with all the hits of the day in the late 60s. And, sung by Sonny and Cher, The Lovin' Spoonful, you name it, they were there. That would be Gary and the Pacemakers, hosted by Jerry Lewis, Michael Landon, Sammy Davis Jr., Hullabaloo. We'll cover that on Sunday. Yes, we will. And Dupa says, love this story. Rumpeltrunch says, that's a great story. And I love that Sinatra cracks up every time Rickles tells it. Well, because I'm such a freak, Sinatra himself told that story once with Rickles on The Tonight Show. And it's just as funny, if not funnier, when Frank tells it. So that's what we got going on. I kind of feel like I should play They Call Me Mr. Gulley. You guys want it so bad, but I don't think I can because I've got this great Sinatra-sounding song here. I promise tomorrow I'll play They Call Me Mr. Gulley at the start of the show. Hey, thanks to everyone for being here. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. We desperately need that. We need a little play. Rumble Trenchcoat says, yes, I remember that too, also being a freak. Yes, we share the same sickness, my friend. And thanks to you, Rumple Trenchcoat, for your kind donation. That's about all we got for today. So I'm looking at that old clock on the wall. Gosh, I love Frank Sinatra. I listened to that music today. I watched the concert yesterday that I spoke of earlier from 1970 in London. And I listened to the main event last night. And there's no one like him. There never will be. And anyway, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And with all of that being said, I think the only thing left to say is, till next time, we'll see you next time.
They said the night was crowded, too many voices in the room. Some burn bright for a moment, some fade out far too soon. I've watched the doors swing open, I've felt them close just as fast. You learn to mind your footing on a floor made out of glass. I've been counted out, I've been counted wrong. I've heard the doubts get loud and strong. When the lights go out and I play that song, I'm still on. I've had nights full of promise, I've had days that wouldn't end. Some chase the sound of thunder, some wait for trends to bend. I've seen the door swing wide open, I've seen them slam just as fast. You learn to move with some caution on a surface built to crash. Let them talk about the past, let them say it doesn't last. I don't need to win forever, I just need to run one more mile, one more honest soul. I've been counted up, I've been counted wrong. I've heard the doubts get loud and strong. I'm not going anywhere.